are saying, please come and send us support. We can win here.
This was a real king of the hill fight. The Romans pushed the Macedonians up on the slope of the hill. The Macedonians regrouped, pushed the Romans right back down the hill. Skirmishes from both sides met and fought fiercely. There was a lot at stake. Philip was fighting for survival, the Romans for total supremacy. 197 BC. Rome is battling to stop Philip of Macedon from seizing control of Greece. As the mist cleared, both Flaminius and Philip were nervous about sending reinforcements.
No commander likes to be rushed into a battle against his or her better judgment. Also, they don't want to be caught out and miss an opportunity.
The terrain didn't suit either army. It wasn't flat enough to line up the Roman legions or the Macedonian phalanx in battle formation.
Where a phalanx does not want to fight is in hills and in conditions in which there's not good atmospheric conditions. In other words, they need visibility, they need a flat space so that these spears can be unleashed.
It was very difficult to form a phalanx quickly. The phalanx usually consisted of 16 ranks of spearmen called phalangites. Each carried a 20-foot spear. The first 5 ranks held their spears level. The remaining 10 ranks held their spears at a slope to deflect arrows and sling stones.
A phalanx has been called essentially a gigantic pincushion. They would hold this hedge of pikes out in front of them. This gave them a great advantage over troops normally equipped who couldn't reach the phalangites with their shorter spears, whereas the phalanx could quite literally steamroller them into defeat.
It normally took hours to get an army into phalanx formation, and Philip had 16,000 infantry to organize. Flaminius had an easier task. The Roman army fought in 3 lines, each of which were divided into squares called maniples. This was a loose and flexible formation and gave the Romans the edge.
The legion might have 30 maniples, and the idea was that they could be either flexible in sort of a checkerboard formation if they were up against lighter armed troops, but if they met a phalanx such as Philip's, then they could coalesce and have a solid front.
If the phalanx can be characterized as a pincushion, the Roman legion, by contrast, was like a buzzsaw. The legionaries emphasized the use of the sword, and they would carve their way quite literally and ruthlessly and bloodily through opponents.
The Roman and Macedonian cavalry battled as both commanders hurried to assemble their armies. Philip was encouraged by reports that Roman skirmishers had been driven back. But if he exploited this advantage, he would have to attack with his phalanxes only half formed up. He ordered half his phalanxes, about 8,000 men, to assemble at the top of the slope. Philip may have held the high ground, but by this time, Flaminius had managed to line up all his legions at the bottom of the slope, on the plain in front of the Macedonians. Philip now had to make a crucial decision. His phalanx had overwhelming force, but the Romans were more flexible. Should he go for a knockout blow before the Romans could move around either side and encircle him?
He knows that his Macedonian forces, by their weight, by their momentum, the depth of their formation, the pikes and so on, will be able to prevail. He can't afford to wait and leave the initiative to the Romans, because that will enable the Romans to outflank him.
But the other half of the Macedonian army, the left wing under its commander Nicanor, was still forming up and was not ready for action. Philip weighed the risks. He ordered the attack. As the phalanx rolled forward, every Roman threw his spear, the pilum, into the closely packed troops. The Macedonians crashed into the Roman left wing and drove them down the slope.
The poor Romans on the left wing had to confront these pikes that were heading down at a great speed toward them. So anybody who was in that particular path of that onrushing sea of spears would be annihilated.
But instead of going to the aid of the legionaries, Flaminius decided to hit the enemy where it would hurt most.
Flaminius is relying on the endurance of the Roman legions. So even though they're being pushed back, they are not breaking. Flaminius has the time to do something else, and he does that with his right wing.
Flaminius sent his own right wing against Nicanor and the Macedonian left, who had just struggled to summit the hill. The legion and the phalanx were locked in combat. The legionaries with sword and shield against the wall of razor-sharp spears. Flaminius had taken a huge gamble. Phalanx had never been defeated in battle. The Romans would have to do what no other army had ever done: fight their way through a forest of spears. 197 BC. Rome is battling to stop Philip of Macedon from seizing control of Greece. The Roman commander Flaminius has thrown his legions against the phalanx. The front ranks are trying to cut a path through the spears.
The method you have to deal with is get inside the spears. Once you pass the front spear, he can't touch you. He's dead meat. And once you pass the second spear, he's out of the battle. And if you can get past the fifth spear, the battle is over, because there is nothing they can do.
The men in the phalanx fought in tight formation, no more than 3 feet apart.